So for my next guest here at Regenerated Me, I'm thrilled to be able to talk to a genuine multi-award winning pioneer in the field of exercise for seniors. Someone who's making a significant improvement to the lives of thousands of older men and women throughout the UK through the company she set up back in 2010, which she aptly called Move It or Lose It. Julie Robinson, welcome to Regenerated Me.
Thank you, Martin. It's a pleasure to join you.
It's an honour to have you with us today because I want to cover quite a lot of things with you. Julie, perhaps take us back to Move It or Lose It and just take us through what took you there. Everyone talks about journeys these days. What was your journey to get you to start Move It or Lose It?
Okay, well, way back in another lifetime, I was a PE teacher, and actually I've spent my life trying to motivate and encourage people to be active, whether that was from teenagers in a secondary school or primary school children, or then women in a dance and exercise group doing aerobics and keep fit. That's always been a passion of mine, to just try and find things that people enjoy that can change their lives for the better. And I realised as I was getting older, and my parents were getting older, obviously, and facing some health conditions in later life, that I really didn't know what to do to help them for the best. I'd fallen into the trap of thinking I was being kind by doing everything for them. And as I started to investigate, I saw a huge gap in the market for a class and an activity that would be really fun for older people to do, but safe and effective too.
No, interesting you say that because of the market, this untapped market that you discovered. Did you find, though, that there was some reticence and negativity in amongst your core market, the older person, the reasons that they sometimes gave you or the family gave why they perhaps wouldn't want to take up exercise?
Yes, definitely. I think that when you begin trying to get this message across, and going back to 2010, there wasn't anywhere near the kind of awareness that we've got now about the importance of activity, whether that's physical, cognitive, social activity, that we all recognise to be absolutely vital for long-term health and well-being now. When we began, it was a big uphill struggle, because sometimes it may be the older person themselves or their children, adult children, their families saying, oh, surely when you get older, that's a time to rest. By making people aware of the fact that they can take some control over their health and well-being in later life is fantastic. And the more that we can do to encourage safe and effective activity, the better. And that's better for everybody. It's better for the person, their family, the NHS, the economy as a whole.
It's getting that message over. I think you're right. I think there is a bit of a sea change now in terms of aging well. The whole concept seems to be moving forward in the right direction.
It is, and you've got to find something that resonates with that individual. I think one of the best things that we found at Move It or Lose It is that all of the exercises that we do are related to activities of daily living. So there is an actual purpose to that exercise. This isn't just to keep you fit or to strengthen the quadriceps. This is to help you get up the stairs, walk the dog, do the gardening, go on holiday, play with the grandchildren. These are the things that matter to people, and that's how we can help them.
I think that's very key, because when you start talking about exercise, I mean, I remember when I was at school, I hated exercise. It was to do with sport, and I'm probably the least sporty person, probably more fit now than I was 30, 40 years ago. I think if you're a sports person from a young age, it may be something that you can keep going, and you naturally progress as you get older to wanting to keep yourself fit. But as a non-sports person, it does tend to be at schools, certainly in the 70s, 60s and 70s. It was very sports orientated, and I was at a boarding school where, if you weren't playing rugby, which I was terrible at, or cricket, which I was even worse at, you're sort of left to your own devices a bit, to be honest. And I think that what you're saying is very key, and that is you're doing it to improve your life, to improve the ability to, correct me if I'm wrong, reach for a tin of beans from the top shelf, or doing your shopping, or, as you said, playing with your grandchildren.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to know that the exercise that you're doing is going to help you with something that matters to you is the key to getting people to recognise that exercise doesn't have to be painful, it doesn't have to be high intensity, it can be enjoyable as well. And within our programme, we do what we call FABs. As you know, Martin, that's flexibility, aerobics, balance and strength. So it's a real all-round programme that people can do seated or standing, so it's accessible to all. And we've had people who come to us in their 50s through to in their hundreds.
In their hundreds? Seriously, in their hundreds? In their hundreds?
Absolutely. In the care home setting, we've had people over 100 enjoying their birthdays after a Move It or Lose It class. So yes, we can all keep moving.
That's interesting. Let's go back then to FABs. FABs, FABS. What? Remind us what that stands for.
So that's flexibility, aerobics, balance and strength. We also include some games and activities, but we wanted it to be nice and catchy with our FABs kind of message, because it'll help you feel fabulous too. But these are the 4 key components that we know from the research and the evidence are absolutely vital for people to maintain their health and well-being, and try and really expand on their health span, not necessarily lifespan, so that we can live longer for better.
The concept of the strength training that I learnt that you offer through the FABS course. So looking at things like, let's just discuss for a minute, which is quite interesting, muscle mass. I understand from my teaching and from working with you that muscle mass is something that can diminish over the years, not least for women over the age of 40, men probably similarish age. That the muscle mass actually reduces. Is that correct? If we do nothing about it?
Yes, that's correct. So we all start to lose our muscle really from the age of 30 onwards, but you wouldn't know it as long as you're still maintaining certain levels of physical activity. But really, as we get past 50, that starts to accelerate, and particularly for women post-menopause. So it's a component that's very, very important, but one that's often neglected. If people perhaps think, well, I go for walks, so I'm fit enough, and they're absolutely right. Keeping that heart health is vital. But maybe they need to add into the mix some resistance or strength work that's going to make sure you can turn back the clock. And we've proven with a 12-week program, we can turn the clock back by up to 10 years in terms of your muscle strength. And that's why it's so important.
That's interesting. Is that because when you do resistance training, you're creating, this is my knowledge, and I'm not a scientist, but that you're creating minute tears in your muscle, which then when they repair, they build up the actual muscle volume.
Yeah, that's one of the aspects to it for sure, which is why they realise that exercise is a fantastic anti-inflammatory. We're all trying to avoid inflammaging, as it's called now.
Inflammaging, I've not heard that one.
Comes with aging. Inflammaging, yes, and it's something that we're all prone to. So by exercising, we're reducing inflammation, and it's that inflammation that causes many of the long-term health conditions, heart problems, stroke, arthritis, diabetes. So that's why we know that exercise is just the best medicine as long as we take it regularly.
Moving on, which is linked to muscle mass, let's talk very briefly about bone density as well. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but through some of the exercises, not least resistance training, which could be resistance bands or light weights or even going for a walk. Is that correct? That we can add bone density?
Yes, it's quite complex because there's quite a lot of factors that are involved in terms of, again, women over 50, particularly post-menopause.
Yes.
One in two women and 1 in 5 men over 50 will have a fracture due to osteoporosis. That's thinning of the bones. And so there's elements of this that we can really take control of. That does include nutrition with calcium, vitamin D, for example, but exercise is really important, but it's having some impact, and also to have, that's as you said, walking, that every time you jolt the bones as you walk, that little reverberation is helping to stimulate the bones to keep them healthy for longer.
So are we saying then, Julie, that we can... I mean, I do mention it a lot. I talk about it, but it's good to get it from the horse's mouth, and from actually the inspiration for me to do what I'm doing now with Regenerated Me. We can actually reverse some of the signs of aging. And by that, I'm being specific. I'm talking about muscle mass and bone density. What you're saying is we can actually build muscle mass. We can rebuild some of that bone density that we've lost through age.
Yes, definitely. It's only when we get to the 90s that it's very difficult to regenerate muscle. But right up until then, with the right program, with progressive strength training, we can turn back the clock and regenerate ourselves. So that's a really important message to get across. It's never too late, but you've just got to take the right advice so people are doing these things safely and with some support.
Interesting. Now, you said earlier that some of the exercises can actually help reduce inflammation. A lot of older people worry that the inflammation will be a barrier in the first place for them to exercise.
If people have, for example, arthritis, which is very, very common, I'm thinking of my class members over the last 15 years, virtually everybody has some arthritis, usually osteoarthritis, as we get older, and your tendency is to want to stop moving. Now, of course, you do need to take this with caution, and we never push people to exercise through pain. There are occasions when a physiotherapist is going to have to give you, or your doctor, specific advice, but generally the worst thing we can do if we are getting arthritis is to stop moving. We need to strengthen the muscles that support the joint, and that in effect can actually make it easier to move and less painful in the long run as well.
And also, if you've got certain muscles that have wasted... My mother, for instance, got a problem with one of her muscles in her leg. And I've tried to encourage her to do exercises that can compensate for that.
Yes, definitely. And actually, muscle weakness, particularly in the glutes, your bottom muscles, your buttocks, are very often the ones that start to decline and can lead to some problems with your walking, or some hip pain or lower back pain. So one exercise that we do, Martin, you'll remember it from your training, is...
I know what you're going to say.
So simple.
I know what you're going to say, and see if I get it right. Is it the stand to sit in the chair?
It is sit to stand. You're absolutely
there you go.
Right, yes.
I do get my gold star.
You do indeed. And that's something that, when we had the pandemic and lockdown, this is something we did to try and help the NHS with a huge programme to try and get people to sit to stand from a dining chair or an upright chair, not from the sofa. Just simply getting up and down out of your chair safely for 30 seconds every day is absolutely transformational.
That is very important for people, and it's so simple to do. You don't need specialist equipment.
Exactly. It's part of daily life. We've got a video on YouTube that's called the cuppa routine, as in having a cup of tea.
Yeah.
So CUPPA, the cuppa routine.
Yes.
4 simple exercises you can do in the time it takes to boil a kettle. Anybody can watch it, and it includes the sit to stand. So we try to make exercise part of your daily life.
I think that's quite an important thing, to actually interweave it with daily life. I mean, there are certain things that you can do in the shower. Following from what I learnt, I do pelvic floor in the shower because, it's part of the routine. You can do it there and then. No one's going to know. No one's going to see. It's a difficult one to teach pelvic floor exercises because it's difficult to physically demonstrate, isn't it? Because it's all from within.
It is. Yeah, you've got to visualise that action. So it takes some really good descriptive teaching, that one does. But I think that once people recognise and can find the right muscles, and sometimes they do need some extra help with that, but it can be a really easy thing that we should be doing 3 times a day, every day. And so that's something that, people need to find a trigger that makes this a habit.
I did want to talk to you about balance because it's probably, I would say, one of the most important elements to get right as an older person, because we all know that falls in older people can be quite catastrophic.
That's sadly true, and balance is probably one of the things that people neglect until something happens to make them really think about it. So when people first come into our class, we do a simple balance test to ascertain whether they should be seated or standing to participate. But I think it takes people by surprise because our balance tends to deteriorate in a very subtle way, and we're not aware of that until we put ourselves into a situation where we do try to balance. So I think we have to work on strength, because it's no good trying to balance unless you've got enough strength to be able to bear weight on one leg, for example. But once you are strong enough, then making balance part of your daily routine is great. Everybody's probably heard of brushing their teeth being the trigger to remind them to stand on one leg. It could be 30 seconds on one leg, then 30 on the other, then repeat.
Yes.
We do that twice a day. It's a nice, easy reminder.
Also, some of the other exercises that you teach, I remember one where you walk a little bit like a penguin with you're on your heels and you're walking, if you need, with a table or a chair nearby so you can put your hand on it gently if you needed that extra comfort blanket, if you like, for support. But basically you're walking like a penguin on your heels, forwards and then backwards, and then walking on your tippy toes as well in exactly the same manner, having maybe a table or a chair nearby for just safety's sake, just in case you feel a wobble coming on. All these things help improve, what's the posh word for balance? Proprioception, is that right?
Yeah, proprioception is a really integral part of good balance. So that's being aware of where your body is in space. And it is something that does decline sometimes with our vision and our hearing starting to deteriorate. But we can still work on this. So we always suggest having a table, if you're at home, the dining table or the kitchen work surface at your side or in front of you to help and support your balance. And that's why it's really important to get that basis first, and going along to a class is a perfect way to do that.
Yes.
And then start to do your homework, things that you can do at home. Interestingly, people that find balance a little bit tricky, say a heel raise, so you're standing with feet apart, hip width apart, and you're holding on to a chair or table for support, and you raise both heels up. Now, focusing ahead, you might feel quite stable and you might be able to let go of the support. But simply having a fingertip touching the chair, even though it isn't giving you any mechanical advantage, it's tricking your brain into giving you that essential support to balance. But once somebody starts to turn their head, then that balance, you will wobble and feel a little bit jittery. You have to drop the heels and just keep working on that until you build up the strength, the ability and the confidence to do that.
And going back to what you said at the very beginning, this is all about incorporating these things in our everyday life. So I can imagine if you want to get on and off a bus or get on and off a curb or on the road, these are the things that you're going to need. Again, going back to my mother who lives in the West End of London, she often complains about, and rightly so, about street furniture, trip hazards everywhere she goes. It's very, very tricky. And I think with these balance exercises, at least people would have, older people have a sporting chance of hopefully not falling over.
Yes, I think that's a really big effect, is not just the physical fall, but how that can impact, even if you've not been badly injured, it can really impact upon your confidence then. And then you start to avoid going into any situation which you feel is risky, and that can limit your social engagement and lead to loneliness and social isolation. So balance is a really important thing that we want to work on, and as you said, to prevent that first fall in the first place would be ideal, but we also want to make sure that people have enough power and speed of reaction to prevent a stumble becoming a fall. We can correct ourselves if we can move quickly enough and we have the right reactions and strength and power to do so.
Talk me through on a practical note then, if our listeners here at Regenerated Me want to join a FABS class, what's the best way to find out about their nearest availability?
Yeah, the great thing about Move It or Lose It is that we're building up the number of instructors and classes all across the country, and the easiest way to do that is go to our website, which is www.moveitoрлoseit.co.uk, and there's a class finder, and you can click on that, pop your postcode in, and it'll tell you where your nearest class is, and it'll have the contact details of the instructor, so you can get in touch, have a chat, get the reassurance you need to find out about that class before you attend. And typically the first class is free, so it's a nice way of trying it out to see if it suits you.
Hopefully very soon there'll be more and more instructors in an area near you, so to speak.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We've got people right up from the tip of Scotland down to the tip of Cornwall, but there are gaps across the country where we need more instructors. So like you, Martin, we'd really encourage people who have an interest in this, who perhaps have retired and would like to do a job that's incredibly rewarding, keeps them fit and active, as well as the people they teach, then get in touch with us to find out about our training program.
That's interesting, because I personally did your training program, as you know, and I learnt so much about the aging body, of which I put myself in that category. And of course, many of the exercises, many of the strategies I learnt from Move It or Lose It, from FABS, I incorporate in my own regimes today, and will continue to do so. So it's been really important for me to do that. And it's good, as you said, for people who are youngish, fitish. It's a great opportunity for them to learn a new skill and to make a new source of income for themselves by becoming FABS instructors.
Yes, I think there's over half of our instructors are over 50. Many of them are in their 60s. And they don't want to retire and sit at home and not do things. They want that challenge to learn something new and to go out and get people exercising and socialising in their local community. Well, it really is the most rewarding job.
Well, it keeps them fit and it gives them an income stream as well. If you're a teacher, that's what you'll have. You'll have both. And just remind us how you can become an instructor. Talk us through the time frame, how long it takes to qualify.
The program involves e-learning, so you do all the theory online and watch videos of how to do the exercises. There's 70 exercises, and you learn how to do them seated and standing, and how to adapt them and how to relate them to activities of daily living. And then you attend a 2-day practical, either online, on Zoom, or face-to-face if you prefer, and that is where we would then observe and assess you to be able to see that you've learnt the exercises and that you can safely and competently deliver them, so you can go on out then into the community and start teaching. People usually take typically up to 6 weeks to do that. Some people book those practical days. We've got them booking now through into November, so it depends how much time you've got to do that initial learning and give yourself plenty of time to practice the exercises. The best thing is look on the website, read all about it, and give us a ring. You can phone us up. There's a free phone number on the website, and you can find out a lot more to see if this is something that suits you and you fancy doing.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Now, one question I need to ask you before we say goodbye for today is our strapline, our tagline here at Regenerated Me is 70 years and then some. What is your take on that line?
I love it. I think it's a really positive message instead of, oh, this is an age where everything starts to wind down and come to an end. Well, it shouldn't have to be like that. It's the perfect time to regenerate yourself and come out and have renewed vigour and vitality to try new things, and don't just give up because the years are ticking by. It doesn't mean it's the end. For many, it's the time of a new beginning. So I think it's a great strapline.
That's brilliant. That's so good. Julie, thank you so much for your time. It's a really great experience to talk to you today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and all the very best.